what are you doing now to help like build that site up? Like what's the process like for building it?
It's pretty fascinating and strange because there's just no roadmaps, and it was a great honor and also a little bit scary to be asked to be the executive editor, which meant that I would have creative control over basically everything for the site. It started actually with me just quietly on my own, working away for a few months to just start the wheels rolling. I wrote a lot of the content myself. I was being the curator of content. I was like, what do we need on the site today? I want to talk about Jessica Jones. I would just decide, like, what are we lacking this week? What haven't we talked about? Let's try this other area. Did we have some manga recently? I would start like kind of mixing and sifting different types of topics in on the site
and see what's working and see what's not working.
Yeah.
And doing some testing and being like, okay, this is working or this isn't working or.
Yeah. And the name of the site, comiccon.com, is interesting because it could really be anything. I was specifically hired to make sure that a significant amount of it was comics content, though, because the whole point would be to keep comics in the news cycle, because comics do compete with other areas of pop culture now so much, and we need to keep those comic shops open and keep creators employed and making new work. So just promoting those was part of the big drive there.
It's really cool. And one thing that is always like important is just kind of creating new content, getting the word out about different books.
Right.
So what's like a process whenever you like pick up a book and you're like, okay, like how do you tell the story about that comic? Like what kind of goes through your mind? Is it just something that happens while you're reading it, or is it like, do you talk to different creators involved, or what's the process when you're kind of like getting the word out about a book?
There's a number of different approaches, and sometimes these days I have enough contributors that we might actually take multiple approaches over time so that the same book might continue to get promotion, which I think is a great strategy.
Absolutely.
One of the things that comics can struggle with is if it's multiple issues, that like the first issue gets pressed, the second issue gets pressed, and then it goes down, right? And maybe no one's hearing about the fourth or fifth issue or the second arc. But often that work is great work, and it needs to be out there. People need to hear about it, but there's just no media for that. So we often set up a kind of plan where we want to start with the announcement of a book. When a company is ready to announce a book, hopefully we could get an exclusive on that, because that's great if it's some sort of breaking thing. But if not, we still want that really accurate source material of what this book is and what the company intends it to be, quotes from the creators about how they see the project, the best art we can get so we can publish some really cool splash pages or whatever, just get the readers excited about what's coming. And then as the news cycle moves on, we'll start doing interviews as we get closer to the time when people can order those books, because we want to get those pre-orders in. We want the bookstores also to get excited about books, so we try to plan in time, when we're doing those things. So I think that announcements, interviews, we'll do advanced reviews if we're allowed to do that, and that'll be, again, to remind readers that it's coming. Like 2 weeks from now, this is happening, so let's put it on your pull list or talk to people, make sure you get this book. And then when the book actually hits, I always try to have a follow-up review from a reviewer who might have almost no knowledge of the book or something like that. So they give a fresh approach that again, would appeal to another type of reader who is just new and just heard about it for the first time. Maybe they want to go buy it that day.
I love it. I'm so excited hearing you talk about it, because it's not like you're like, okay, this project, we're just going to write an article once and that's done and we're going to leave it be.
Right.
It used to be in the olden days.
Sure.
They had it used to be 4 impressions would create buying power. So it used to be that you have to go out and see something 4 times, and then you can go into the comic book store and say, I'm interested in that.
Okay.
But nowadays, because of social media and we're inundated with new things, you have to see something like 18 times.
Sounds about right.
Before you become comfortable enough to go, okay, this is something I need to check out. And so it's amazing that you're able to kind of like corral that and be like, okay, cool, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, and you can, now you're off really running, and then you can kind of like, when people see it multiple times, they become more comfortable with the product.
They do.
And it's so something that's really cool and really fascinating to kind of get behind that.
Yeah, and I don't have any problem saying this, but maybe some people have different attitudes. What really works is when multiple sites do all of that too, and it's staggered so that readers are seeing it from multiple angles, right?
Absolutely.
And different content and different approaches. Maybe different creators are interviewed on one than the other. Maybe the colorist and letterer and cover artists actually get to do interviews too, and then you get the whole spread.
You get the whole team involved, and you get just so many pieces of content, and everyone's kind of championing this book, and it kind of takes over, and you have this like whole thing that like it seems like your entire social media feed just becomes like about this book, and you're like, how did that happen?
It's true. It suddenly hits a tipping point where it's just everywhere, and hopefully that doesn't hit the point of annoyance where it's like I'm tired of seeing that product everywhere. But if it's presented in interesting, clever ways, then it's okay.
I think that's the goal, is always presenting it in a new, fresh way. And you kind of like, oh, cool, look. But I think it takes a little bit of time for people to get used to new things. I think it's just human nature. It's like everyone wants that thing that they grew up with, whether it's Alan Moore or Neil Gaiman. But it's like when you learn about somebody new, you're like, oh, okay, like I've heard of them before, but I don't know if I'm ready to go into them. But then someone else starts talking about them, and you're like, oh yeah, like I could get into to Hannah Means-Shannon, like and you just start talking about it.
Yeah, there's a certain warmth and lasting power when it comes from another human being.
Exactly, it's very true.
Yeah.